Another thing to keep in mind is that technology is the friend. You look at the East Coast. The East Coast of the U.S. now has more trees than it did 80, 100 years ago. If you look at those old Civil War pictures of farms, all clear-cut. That's what you had to do in those days. And today, thanks to technology, you go in New England, you walk in forests, you got to be careful you don't trip over these old stone walls of areas that where the trees have regrown, because you don't need the acreage today that you needed then to grow foodstuffs. So progress is good. But thank you for having us come by. Yeah.
Journalist question. What? Two sides of the same question. Senator Inhofe can chime in if he wishes. What's the greatest, most positive achievement as you look back at the Bush years? And on the flip side, what's your greatest disappointment that you hope the next Republican president can improve on? So two sides of the same coin.
Well, let me start with the disappointments. One is I'm disappointed of the de facto policy of the administration of having a weak dollar. The theory is that improves your trade balance, but whatever you gain temporarily on trade by letting the value of your currency go down, you more than pay for distortions in the rest of the economy. We see it in housing. The excess liquidity created in 2004 helped put the housing market on steroids. Now, the industry went berserk, but we all know in the court of law, the bartender is also held liable if the patron is drinking too much and the bartender keeps serving up the booze. The bartender, i.e. the Fed, bears some liability and responsibility. So that's a big one. And the Treasury Department bureaucracy has triumphed on that one, and we're paying the price for it now. Major distortions. Obviously on the spending side, the Senator can speak far more with horror stories than I can. We lost our way on that one. And on the positive side, which gets to one of the negatives, on the positive side, the President recognized after 9/11 that we had to fight this thing. And I guess where the disappointment comes in that after 9/11, especially when we recognized we had an insurrection in Iraq, we still tried to fight the thing on the cheap and did not make the call to the country to raise the resources and the manpower to meet the new obligations we faced around the world. And the continuous deployment of people. My wife and I have 5 daughters. They're in their 20s and 30s. They have a number of friends who are in the military and had assignments over there. What they saw over there is very different from what was reported here. And but the rotations begin to wear on a while. The morale is good. They want to do it, but we've got to realize the fact we had to scrape and scrounge to get the surge going, that's ridiculous. We should have the manpower necessary to meet these obligations and do it in a way where we don't put an extra strain on people who are already putting enough on the line. And that gets, I think, to the most fundamental failure of the administration.
Presumably it would be John McCain. Is he talking enough about taxes and monetary policy and what he'll do to get your approval?
Well, I'm supporting him, and I'd originally supported Rudy Giuliani, and when that campaign failed in Florida, I went with Senator McCain. And I think Senator McCain has come around on taxes. He has always been relentless on trying to control spending, and he understands, I think, the tax side. But one of the things I think he has to do in the months ahead is put out an exciting, bold tax program vividly contrast with what the Democrats want to do. And I think the American people will respond. People around the world are tired of taxes. Just to give you one example, in Britain, not known as a conservative haven, and where the Tory party, Conservative Party, abandoned tax cuts as a policy years ago to their real damage, this past summer, the new Prime Minister, Gordon Brown, was ready to call what they call a snap election. They can do that over there. He's ready to do it for the fall. And at the Conservative Party conference, the Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer, their equivalent of Secretary of the Treasury, threw out two minor tax proposals. One was to get rid of the stamp tax, which was in effect a sales tax on new sales of homes. I think it was 1 or 1.5%. He proposed to get rid of it, and proposed tripling the exemption on the death tax. Suddenly, their poll ratings soared, and the Labor Party came up with their own watered-down versions of the same. So the issue will resonate if you push it with vigor, enthusiasm.
When Senator McCain called you and asked you who he should pick as his vice president, who did you recommend?
Aside from Jim. Hopper and, yeah. The call hasn't been made, and I don't think will be made. We're discussing it on the way over, various possibilities. And I think first he's going to want to see who his opponent actually is and what the circumstances of that opponent achieving the Democrat Party nomination. If it's Hillary Clinton, that'll be a very different thing because there'll be a lot of disaffected Democrats now. Obama's come too far to be easily shunted aside with the speech at the convention. There'll be a lot of feeling that we was robbed. And if it's Barack Obama, he may feel the need to reach somebody unusual. And I don't know who that would be in the party. Maybe Kay Bailey. I don't know who, but it depends. When a presidential candidate picks a VP, it's not so much who a state can bring. The last VP candidate who actually brought a state was Lyndon Johnson in 1960. He delivered Texas. Don't ask how, but the state was delivered. And but also after that, if you picked a VP, who would cover your weak flanks? Who would reassure the doubters about you? When Reagan picked George H.W. Bush, it wasn't just to unite the party. He had thrashed Bush in the primaries, so he had most of the party with him. But he wanted to show the public that he would have so-called moderates around him, that he would have experienced people around him. And so the doubters who felt this guy portrayed in the press as a right-wing kook could be trusted. You could take a chance on him with the Oval Office. So that's what you try to reassure the doubters. And so who will be the doubters when the Democrats pick their nominee? I think will have a heavy bearing on where John McCain is going to lean.
Obviously, you mentioned you're supporting McCain. What is your message to the conservatives out there who say, I'll vote for Hillary before I'll vote for McCain, or we'll concentrate on 2012 if we have to be in the wilderness for 8 years, comparing it to Reagan in 76?
Well, 4 years, a lot can happen. Remember, in the 4 years between 76 and 80, Iran went, Nicaragua went, inflation went wild, and we were in a very tough situation in 1980. Thankfully, we had a great president, but that wasn't ordained that you'd get a change. If Carter had been more skilled politically, that might not have turned out the way it did. So in 2008, I'd say to doubters, yes, we all have doubts, but remember, if a Democrat gets in, the next president may pick 4 justices. 4 justices are above the age of 70. John Paul Stevens may decide, okay, there's a Democrat in, I'm going to step down, and they'll hope they'll appoint a clone